Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads. I hope you're doing well. It is time for Saturday Shorts, and it's also the last Saturday for Indie Author August. And so today I went with Charles McGarry's Talendor's Guest. I read the first 4 chapters in this, which is interesting, and we'll get into that here shortly. Charles McGarry has written 6 works for sale on Amazon, but you probably know him under the name Chaz, as in Bookish Chaz on BookTube. If you haven't seen his YouTube channel, you definitely should. He is a lover of all things, including fantasy, as this is heavily steeped in. And we're going to get into this, but before we do, I have some author insights that I want to share with you about Chaz. So when I asked him, what inspired you to write your first book and what made you choose the self-publishing route, Chaz said, I was inspired for my love of fantasy and all the wiggly storytelling worms crawling around in my head. I wanted to self-publish because I wanted more control over my writing and my royalties. That's the short answer, LOL. I also asked, what's one thing you would wish you had known before you self-published? And Chaz said, I wish I had known how much work uploading and formatting the book would be. And then I also asked, how do you stay motivated and disciplined during the writing process, especially without a traditional publishing team pushing your deadlines? And Chaz said, I'm not always great at staying motivated, but I find writing buddies that keep poking me. And so without further ado, we're going to dive right in and talk about Talendor's Guest. So in chapter 1, we meet the Traveler. And the Traveler is a wizard, and he comes upon a place by a mountain where he sees a door, and it has runes on it, and he uses magic and spellcasting to open this door in this mountain. And he comes upon a huge, enormous cavern full of books, piles and piles and shelving of books as far as the eye can see, treasure, and a dragon. And he at first doesn't know it's a dragon, but starts conversing and realizes that it is a dragon, and the dragon's name is Talendor. The Traveler, who is obviously a wizard, remains the Traveler. And so a bargain is struck, as the dragon is very hungry and can smell and almost taste what would be a nice morsel in the Traveler. And so a bargain is struck, and it leads to a really great excerpt that I wanted to share. And it was from Talendor the Dragon. It said, why, yes, spin me a tale, Traveler. In fact, let us strike a bargain. You will regale me with your stories, and if I am sufficiently pleased, you will be free to go. Do we have an accord? And so that is the premise and the setup. And it's problematic and interesting. It's problematic for me because as I read on and read chapters 2, 3, and 4 to get some tales in this story for Saturday Shorts, it became problematic because now I'm at a point where I want to find out what happens with this dragon, this wizard, so I'm going to have to finish the rest of the book. Even though this is an episode of Saturday Shorts and I'm going to talk about the tales I have read thus far, it is going to be problematic for me because it's going to add an additional book to my TBR. And so, but I'm very interested in this. So after each tale, you kind of flash back to where we are with the wizard and the dragon. And it becomes evident that the dragon is maybe leading the wizard on, and the wizard is understanding this. And so it creates a dynamic of what is going to happen. And so that's where it kind of hooks me. And so I'm really invested in this. And so with all that being said, we're going to dive right in and talk about these tales. But before we do, I am going to give you some more author insights. So when I asked Chaz, what part of the writing process do you enjoy the most? And what part do you dread? His response was, I love getting my story on the page, but I dread self-editing. I'm not a writer, but I could totally understand that. I also asked, do you have a writing routine or a process you use to stay motivated, creative, etc.? Chaz's response, I probably should, but I don't. And so let's talk about the first tale that I read. This is titled The Sun Wielder. And we are in the Cartesian Empire. And the summary of this is we're in the city of San. It's part of the Cartesian Empire, the largest of the three major provinces. San is the home of the royal seat. The High Lord Dalen Arstwind and Lady Ranella Arstwind, the royal family, they hold majesty over a sun sapphire, a huge sapphire that has the ability to enhance any arcane or magical powers that the possessor should have. And we get this information on the precipice of a war that happens in Saan with the Shadow. The Shadow and their shades and their nether dragons all come to fruition to try to ransack the citadel in Saan. Lord Dalen falls in battle, and Trant, their son, comes to power, and he has an interesting lineage. And then we get very quickly that the Shadow is going to re-engage in this war, in this battle. And so Trant has to rally his forces in this battle and see what he can use. And his father passes the Sun Sapphire to him. And so it's a very interesting tale. I really enjoyed some of the kind of night and fantasy elements that Chaz describes here. It's very vivid. I liked some of the characters, especially Trant. I liked some of the action, some of the mentions to the Shadow and the nether dragons I thought was very interesting. I liked how they called upon other races in the story, which I won't spoil, to try to come and help their aid and try to draw in troops after losing in kind of the first kind of skirmish. And so it's a very interesting tale. I gave it a 4.0. Enjoyed it. It was a great start to this. And so now let's move on and talk about some more fun facts about Chaz. And so when I asked Chaz, how do you approach editing and revisions as a self-published author? Do you work with beta readers? Do you have a professional editor? Chaz's response is, I do some editing as I go along, and then my initial draft goes through several revisions afterwards. I do work with beta readers, but I just don't have the financial capacity to hire an editor, which is completely understandable. I also asked, what's been the biggest challenge in marketing your books and what has worked surprisingly well? His response was, my biggest challenge is getting past imposter syndrome and also getting past his distaste for social media. Surprisingly, he says, the few times I've mentioned my book on the channel and posting links to it in my description has worked very well. And so the next tale in this is a reluctant alchemist. And we get an interesting summary because we meet Maek, a very young 10-year-old boy. He's in this town of Dayhaven, and he finds out in a tuffle with another boy, a friend actually, by the name of Dolan, that he has arcane abilities. And so he realizes later that he possesses the power of transmutation. And so while this is going on and he's trying to process it as a 10-year-old boy would, and he's very upset about what happens, Dolan ends up dying, and Maek runs away to his house and trying to find comfort with his family. While this is going on, a mysterious gentleman by the name of Burdock watches this, and he has an understanding about what is taking place and what the boy must feel, what thoughts are going through his head. And yeah, you kind of get a little touch of a backstory there. And so Burdock meets with Maek and talks him into going with him and going away from Dayhaven, where he's going to be an outsider and be outcast after the council meets. And so Burdock and Maek leave Dayhaven, but they don't leave it necessarily safely. And so that's kind of the summary of this. There's a lot of cool elements in this one. It's a little longer than the first tale, which I enjoyed. Maek is a great character. Burdock is a very interesting character as well. The power, the arcane abilities, the magic is very interesting as well. A very interesting fantasy-esque telling of a story. I really like Chaz's writings. Matter of fact, does a really good job with some of the conversations as well. The dialogue is very engaging as well. I gave this one a 4.3. It was really enjoyable. I liked kind of the other character we meet in this without spoiling it and some of his motivations, so I'll just leave it at that. And so let's move on and give you some more fun facts about Chaz. So some other fun facts. I asked Chaz, how do you balance writing new books with promoting the books you already have published? And he says there are two separate worlds in mind. They're kind of different. So it's relatively easy to balance them when I make the effort. And that is very interesting. I also asked, what kind of readers do you think will connect with your work, and what do you hope they may take away from it? And his response was, people who enjoy weird fantasy adventures will most likely be the best fit for my books. I have a wild imagination. I hope readers will come away with a smile and a good experience. And so the last tale I've read thus far in this collection is The Ink Master. And this was another interesting one, and my favorite of the three thus far. The Ink Master summary is about a very tall man of around 40 who does tattooing. And he attracts people from all over the seven realms to come to his little quaint shop and get his abilities, because it's not just a tattoo of runes and other markings upon their skin that they're looking for, because most of these people that come to him are very dissatisfied with their life. They're seeking the Ink Master in hopes that things may be different. He has an arcane ability as a tattoo artist that when he inks people, he ends up altering their destiny. This is a really cool concept, a really cool character. It's a very eventful day that we get in this tale when he encounters 5 different people needing different things. And we get to see kind of at the end how their lives are changed after their meeting with the Ink Master. And so that's kind of the summary of this. What makes it a really good short story is how he gets kind of involved in this. They all have different needs and different kind of motivations for being there, which is very interesting. And you get a little bit about not only the individuals, but of the Ink Master as well, which I found really, really cool. You have people from a thieving lord. You have a young girl wanting to make a name for herself. You have a high and pompous duke. You have a young poor couple wanting a better life for their infant. And you have an old mercenary who kind of just wants the pains of everything to go away. So it's a very kind of eclectic and robust kind of character set that creates a very dynamic and interesting tale. There is one excerpt I thought was really good. It was this: words have power. Written words can weave a story, but in the hands of the Ink Master, words can alter the fabric of human existence. I gave this one a 4.4. I thought it was a really cool concept, a really interesting tale. I really liked how also I mentioned earlier when at the end of these tales, you kind of come back to where Talendor is listening to the traveler tell these, and you get a little back and forth for about a page of what the dragon is saying. And you can tell the dragon is leading the traveler on, and the traveler knows this. So as you're getting these tales, that individual kind of battling of heads, so to speak, is starting to escalate, and they're trying to figure each other out, and they have obvious but differing motivations. So I think it's really interesting. As I mentioned, I am completely hooked and sucked in, so I'm definitely going to have to continue on reading these and figure out how this ends. Lastly, I asked Chaz, what advice would you give aspiring indie authors who are on the fence about self-publishing? And his response was, make sure you have the time and the finances to dedicate toward being a one-person business. And I hope you enjoy this. If you have not checked out Bookish Chaz on YouTube, you should. He is also under Charles McGarry on Amazon. His works are out there for consumption and sale. And so definitely check him out. I think he has a really great understanding of fantasy. I like his prose, and I like how he does characters. Very fun reading, as I mentioned. Yeah, I'm going to have to finish it. So Anyways, I hope you enjoy this, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Thanks.